Firstly, welcome all of you. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedules. I appreciate it is a Thursday and a Thursday evening, so thank you so much for dedicating this 1 hour and a bit to EMA Partners and the broader audience. Thank you also for taking the time to prepare some of the questions as well. So very much appreciate it. I'll probably keep thanking you going forward, but thank you from our side. Thank you to all of our viewers. We have a number of people logged in now who are viewing the session live. We won't be able to hear or see any of them during the session, but we will have the opportunity for the live Q&A towards the tail end of the discussion. I will try and reserve at least 10 or 15 minutes for that, because I believe it's quite an important piece and lots of people will want their questions answered. Apologies in advance if we're not able to answer all of the questions. Please, viewers, if you do want to send me your questions via email, please feel free to do so, and I'll try my best to get them answered by the panelists post the discussion. I'll start off by introducing each of our panelists, all of whom have very diverse backgrounds, but equally established human resources and talent leaders in their own right. We're first joined by Ava Mathewson. Ava is currently the head of HR for the Middle East and Africa for DHL. DHL needs no introduction. It's one of the largest logistics groups in the entire world. She has spent the majority of her career with DHL across the world and has been working with the Middle East, Africa and Turkey regions since 2010. So welcome, Ava. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Next is joining us is May Sami. May has a very unique background. She is a seasoned leader with over 28 years of experience, both on the business side as well as on the human resources front. May has worked with conglomerates like PepsiCo on the business side before moving into human resources. She spent a number of years with the large conglomerate Majid Al Futtaim, where she led human resources for a number of their businesses, whether it be hotels and hospitality, malls and mixed communities. She is now the Chief Human Resources Officer for AWJ Holding Company, one of the largest and most diversified family-owned conglomerates in Saudi Arabia. Welcome, May. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Next, joining us is Dalit Shirazi Goldi. Dalit, again, very seasoned senior human resources leader who has a breadth of experience across so many sectors, whether it is energy, oil and gas, pharmaceuticals, private equity, working for some of the most prominent private equity players in this part of the world. And she is now the Group Human Resources Director for the Bukhatir Group, which is one of the largest diversified family-owned conglomerates here in the UAE. Thank you, Dalit, and welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. And last but not least, my colleague, Hala Merhi, who is a senior partner with EMA Partners in Saudi Arabia. She's been with EMA Partners Saudi since the inception of the firm. She's been in Saudi Arabia for the longest time, for more than 20 years. And she partners with some of the most prominent public and private sector entities in the kingdom. Thank you, Hala, and welcome.
Thank you, Amer, for the introduction, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today.
Great. Thank you so much, ladies. So starting the conversation and kicking straight into the depth of the discussion, I want to start on the culture piece. And I think it's important to note that it's always said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And this is something that I particularly believe in, and it's relevant in recent times. Culture is sometimes a misused term. It's sometimes misunderstood. A lot of organizations say, wow, we have a great working culture, but not a lot of people know what it actually means. And it's quite simple. Culture is defined as nothing more than the way that we do things. And the way that we do things as people within our personal lives and within our organizations has changed a lot over the last 3 months. That's across all industries and all functions. So as the custodian of culture and people within your respective organizations, how has the culture changed? And going forward, what do you think will be the positive impact for your business? This is an open question for everyone. May, would you like to go first in answering that?
Of course. as you rightly said, Amer, culture is actually the way we do things. It's the unwritten norms of any group of people working together.
Mhm.
So recently we have all experienced that, like, everything has been shaken. We are facing a totally new situation that was totally unexpected, as said. Surprisingly, majority of the company, and same in our company, it turned out to be positive, and it turned out to affect our culture positively. Basically, the notion or the sense that there is a crisis and we all need to get together in order to, drive the ship through this crisis. It made people, it raised the accountability even higher, which is a norm that we always strive for whenever we look for a culture. So the accountability ladder got higher. That's one. The other thing is that the focus became more on achieving results versus effort, versus spending more hours or something like that. The hours were not monitored anymore, yet the results were monitored. So I think it impacted cultures positively, and it showed how when people collaborate and cooperate together, how we can achieve better results easily.
Thank you. I think I particularly like the whole, the entire organization joining hands and working towards that common goal, not thinking about how long somebody is spending on their laptop or, figuratively in the office, but it's the case of we have to get something done and let's all work proactively to get it done together. So thank you for that point, because it really resonates. Ava, you work for one of the largest conglomerates in the world. You have tens of thousands of people within your organization. What has been your view on the cultural changes, if any, and the positive impacts?
Yeah, 500,000 people we have.
Million,
So
sorry.
first of all, I would say that for us, people first has been a very strong message from the top. We have our colleagues at the moment really working very closely to each other. So there is a more personal touch, I would say, more caring. I mean, definitely here in Dubai, where we have a lot of expats, a lot of people also live here alone. So we have a buddy system to really check in with each other, because it's a very big change from one day to another, to say next 3 months, there's no office, and we didn't know, right, how long this will be. At the same time, communication has intensified. I think for most of us, they cannot, right? And via WhatsApp groups, and as well, there is a business communication as more getting to know our colleagues on a private way. And I've also seen really people coming with very creative ways in how can we make things work. So that has been my experience so far.
Great. I think, the innovation and the out-of-the-box thinking piece has certainly been something that's really come out of this. And we'll get onto the innovation piece a little bit later as well. Talat, what are your views?
Okay, so very quickly, so the Mahathir Group has very diversified businesses. So we're in healthcare, we're in retail, we're in oil and gas, we're in education. So I think importantly, so number one, it's been tough. I think when we talk about culture, we talk about how there's been fear. It's been fearful in pockets. There's ambiguity. There's insecurity when it comes to the culture, the employees. There's a lot of personal, mental issues that people are dealing with. And this is global, as we know. This is happening in every company. Let's be honest. I mean, these are some of the downsides of what's actually happening. At the same time, there's also the whole positive bit. And so what's been positive for us really has been incredibly how agile and how flexible suddenly we become as an organization. And just to give you a quick example, so for example, we have a company called Conmix which has a water treatment plant. So very quickly, we changed things. We started producing hand sanitizers and sanitation sprays, industrial levels. We got it approved and we got it accredited, and we started marketing it within like 2 weeks to 3 weeks since this thing started, right? So that's really quick change in what our strategy was. We have 6 schools as part of our businesses. So it was really incredible. And as you know, schools have been hugely impacted with suddenly teachers who've never had to do or never dealt with distance learning, suddenly they're having to deal with classrooms that are virtual. So how quickly did we digitize that? How quickly did we get on board with teaching kids online? And we've been getting great feedback from the authorities, from KHTA, from SPIA, on our ability to do this and how well we're doing and how engaged the kids are. And finally, we have a company called EMA Healthcare Services, okay, that's been focused on machinery, more like medical machinery. But suddenly we started producing masks on a massive scale, and so we quickly changed our tack. So I think the positive thing has been how agile we've been and how flexible we've been. And I think positively going forward, this is going to be very good for the UAE as a culture in terms of how quickly we respond to things and how quickly we deal with adversity. That's my bit.
Completely agreed. I think, my two favorite words that have come out of this entire thing are agility and speed. And I think, those two things, most organizations have thought, we need to get these things done, and we need to be very adaptable in the way that we do them. We have to react fast. So completely identify with your points. Hala, from Saudi Arabia and within EMA Partners, has there been any cultural shift from our standpoint, you feel?
We have noticed that our team has been working homogeneously together, and now they have shifted from working hard to work smart. So that's the main finding so far.
No, agreed. I think that's common across all and particularly relevant. Thanks for that, Hala. Moving on to something that has been a practical and logistic change for all of us. I talk about working from home and working remotely. Working from home has been the norm for most office-based employees for the last 3 months. I can speak for myself, and I speak for my global colleagues at EMA Partners in our various offices when I say that it's worked actually pretty well for us. We find that we are still engaged. But more importantly, we find that we are very productive, which is more important to note. And I think that Hala will echo that as well. What's been your experience of people working from home? Thanks, Hala. What's been your experience?
Yes, Amer. Sorry, thank you for this. And I want to confirm with your experience as well. The majority of our people have been very positive about this experience. Although they were working from home and sometimes they had to deal with kids, taking care of an elderly or sick person, yet their productivity level was high with a good quality. So we believe we will adopt this model for the times to come with the minimal physical presence of staff in the office. This might lead to a better performance, less headache of transportation, more focus from our staff, and maybe at the end it will have a less cost effect. This might work well for us since our industry is in the consulting, but for some other businesses like manufacturing, for example, and the airline might not be the case. But for us and the global team, it seems it worked well.
Agreed. I think for us as a business, it's very implementable. Whereas for others that are more operations heavy, there are obviously other challenges. For the rest of you, what has been your experience of your people working from home during this time? What have been some of the positives? What have been some of the challenges? And what do you think is the future of working from home or working remotely within your particular organizations? May, what's your view?
As you rightly said, Amer, at the beginning I was a bit, and talking at the beginning, it was like the first few days was a bit of a challenge, that, trying to organize ourselves, what are the communication channels, how frequent, who will be, what are the groups, and so on. But surprisingly, very quickly, all this has been it's like pieces of puzzles that fell into place very, very quickly. And it turned out to be more productive, as everybody's saying. Yet, what is productive on the short term does not necessarily apply for the longer term. Because on the long term, we need to manage performances on the long term, performances of individuals on the long term. And very critical is that you manage the engagement. Because you might find along the way that some people fall between the cracks, if I may say that, or we might lose their engagement. So it's very, very important that we don't lose sight on the long term targets or objectives, yet break that into smaller, shorter term targets, so we can always manage the engagement of employees and their deliverables, and they would always see their piece of the puzzle completing the full picture. Okay, so they wouldn't lose the engagement level. So there is a very big role on the leaders to make sure that their employees are very well informed. Communication is key to this. Okay, I think we've all, as companies, have established the channels, the certain systems, but communication and keeping the momentum of communication and keeping everybody on board is extremely important, so we maintain the momentum and the engagement level.
No, agreed. And these various shifts have been very necessary, and I think that people have really embraced them because we've had to. So that resonates massively. Ava, again, working for such a large conglomerate, what's been your experience?
Yeah, I follow a lot of what May also said on the performance, that we should not take the last 3 months as a reference of and be too overly enthusiastic on everything that went well. So I don't want to take it as a baseline, because as you say, like, kids are at home. In a few months, kids go back to school, so that will be a little bit more of a normalized way. Then we had the lockdown. I don't know, some of the people here, they experienced some difficult situations back home, losses of family members, and airspace is blocked. So that's causing also a lot of emotional stress that we should definitely not underestimate. So the aspect of the whole employee health and well-being, and I think we'll talk about that. That's definitely also something that is very high on our agenda. For us, working from home, as you say, like, it's not the whole. I mean, it's COVID that really facilitated and fast-tracked that whole discussion that we were probably having over the last 2 years. Yeah. So I think that's, for me personally, a very big plus, because at the same time I am leading the women in the logistics industry, and we were a bit stuck at this topic of working more flexible. So for me, this has helped me in that work stream to having more flexibility for the women in our logistics industry as well.
Yeah, and I think you also lead, you're the global leader for gender diversity within DHL as well, right? So this again helps you to champion that side of things as well, which is hugely helpful.
Yeah.
Dalat, which is great. Dalat, what do you think is the future of working from home within your organization? And I caveat it saying that a number of your businesses are very operations heavy, whether it be construction, education, so on and so forth. But for those who are in the offices, you have a large headquarters. What's the plan?
So absolutely. So if you look at where EVA is and where multinational companies are and where local companies are, and literally when you look even within the region, working from home was like, most local companies or heads of local companies were like, what does that mean? We pay you from 9 to 5 and we want to see you in the office. Even if you're in Google or you're, doing nothing all day, you work for 1 hour in the day, we need to see you in the office, okay? I pay you, so you need to occupy that seat. So the culture, honestly, is exactly like that, okay? And we're like light years away from, in terms of our thinking, from the rest of the world and where the world was headed, okay? So what I love about this is the fact that this has like saved us HR people maybe 30 years of trying to beg and convince CEOs that we need to kind of look at temp work or flexible hours, or be a little tolerant of the poor lady who's just had a baby who we're forcing to come to work, that maybe she can work from home. So for me, this has been amazing, because in the 3 months, suddenly I've got a CEO who's actually saying, hey, we can actually save on office space. We might not have to rent so much office space. We can actually, we are actually able to deliver from home. And so that's happening. That's wonderful. So I think the future in terms of where the UAE is, I think in terms of legislation, we are going to see change with regards to allowing people to move freely between companies, to be able to work part-time, to be able to work lesser days, and work 3 days for one company and 2 days for another. So part-time work, temp work, flexible work, I think all of that is going to blossom and is going to be the way we work going forward.
I hope so. I was smiling and laughing because I encounter this daily. And some
Yeah.
I work with some entities like this as well, where it's just an alien concept of working from home, and it has now been sort of thrust upon everyone, and the stakeholders see it as working, which is great to see. Somebody
And
mentioned,
quickly, just quickly to add on to that, just very quickly, is for me personally, and I just find that I think there has to be a hybrid version. For me, I still think there is huge value in having 6 people sit in a room, brainstorm, look at each other's body language, and figure things out. So I think we can never take away from that. I think that's really important, but I think we need to kind of look at both ways of working as and when needed.
agreed. It needs to be a sort of blended working solution.
Yeah.
As opposed to a replacement. Completely agreed. Somebody just touched upon measuring performance, measuring people, productivity, engagement, and so on. And this is something that a number of our clients have raised over the last couple of months, in that we are grappling with how to manage the performance and measure our people over the last 3 months. How have you as HR leaders and how have your business leaders been managing the performance of your people, other than constant communication and so on, over the last 3 months? And as we discussed a little bit earlier, longer term, if working from home part of the time or full time continues, how do we go about overseeing the performance of our people and ensuring that the expectations of our leadership are met? Ava, would you like to take that?
Yeah. So one of the things that is really important for us is the guiding principle is to have focus on result as well as the respect part. Those are the 2 elements. So to only really focus on purely the deliverables will on the long run not work. So you have to really balance that out. So I think Hala already mentioned working smart, yeah. So that's where we are going to, and we also see that when it comes to really following up the performance, yeah. So we use the virtual performance dialogues that we have. So we have some whiteboards that help us as well to visualize what we would have in a normal performance team discussion. Another point that I really find that we see more and that we're also emphasizing more with our leadership now is that leading with purpose. We really see that the employees in the long run, they really need to see where am I belonging to, because we will see indeed, like Talat said, like with that dip, right? And now there is that I need to perform because there is a job insecurity. Let's be very honest. Today, the economy is going down. So there is still that very strong, I need to fight for the company. But once we go into a more, let's say, relaxed mode, for us, that leading with purpose and that sense for belonging is something that we want to really focus on. In addition to really go beyond, I would say also beyond purely UAE and the Middle East. I mean, we are very cautious about the whole cultural awareness, because what Talat was describing as a local company here is for me the same as our West Africa culture, where the office presence is still very important and where we don't have that facility as much as we do have here for working from home. So there, that office part is still very important. So yes, I would really say that time for connection is something that is for us a top priority, to keep that performance up.
Yeah, I think, particularly important, as you mentioned, in locations where that physical presence is something that they're used to, the remote working thing, and monitoring people, remotely isn't the norm. It's about how do we kind of ensure that happens in the long term and create a long-term solution for this kind of a scenario. So thank you for that. We talk about people slowly returning to work. Another relevant challenge that I've been asked, and again it's something that is particularly pertinent for most organizations, is that as we return to the workplace, what do we do if somebody doesn't want to return, isn't comfortable returning for legitimate reasons? For example, they may have a family member who has chronic medical conditions, they may be living with elderly parents or small children, and they don't want to be exposed to being in such close proximity to others. The labour law, as per my knowledge, doesn't set out a detailed framework on what to do in such an instance. What are your thoughts on what to do in such a scenario? Dalat, what are your views?
So Eva also alluded to this. There is a lot of insecurity. There is question marks around jobs. The reality is that we're in a pandemic. The reality is, although there've been, sadly, a lot of people that have passed away as a result of this globally, the reality also is that 96% of people have recovered, have been asymptomatic, have had some bad symptoms, some not so bad. So there are many more people that have recovered and that are living with this pandemic. Until there is a vaccine, which could be next year, who knows when anybody can get tested or injected or whatever. We're talking about not the next 2 months. We're talking about 3 months, 4 months, maybe the next year. Okay. Quite honestly, it's a balance, and I think employees need to be able to make those choices. The thing is, at the end of the day, the company needs to also run, the business needs to run. We need to continue trying to support people and families. You know, we need to continue to pay salaries, and for that, we need a business to run, which is why I believe, you know, most countries are trying to open up their economies as quickly as possible, because, you know, if you don't die by coronavirus, you're going to die because you can't put a meal on the table, quite honestly. We need to be a little practical. I understand the whole bit about supporting people and helping them through this, but I think there comes a point where you need to get a little practical about these things and say, listen, we need to kind of start to build this business back. And if it is possible for the person to be able to work part-time, maybe from home, we also have to encourage people to start being a bit braver and starting to live with this, coming forward with all the precautions, making sure our offices are safe, making sure all the protocols in place. But I think we need to start getting back, you know, into some kind of normalcy. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's being, you know, balanced and practical about it, and
Right.
and maybe you know educating people about the realities, whether it be about the virus or so on. But I think it's something that people need to start thinking about, because it could be something that is a little bit more long term until a vaccine is found. So I agree. So we talk about people. So we talk about people returning to the workplace. Some organizations, some multinationals and regional organizations are talking about you know, maybe 30% of their total staff actually moving to work permanently from home. So there may be those who are staying at home. What are your views and your plans as an organization to do something like that? And do you think that will have any effect on productivity? And I say that, you know, productivity is key. You know, it's easy to stay engaged, but how do you ensure people are productive if they're working from home all of the time? May, what are your thoughts?
I think this depends very much on how you manage it, how you practically manage it. And I echo what everybody has been saying. We need to be practical about that. We need to evaluate roles that need to be on the ground, operational roles that need to be on the ground, and how can we create rotations on these roles, and other roles that can be performed from home. So we create the balance of keeping a certain number at the office, or a certain space between employees at the office for their safety as well. You need to also take into consideration that their safety will ensure the continuity of business, because you wouldn't want to close the office because somebody got sick. You will have to close the office for 2-3 weeks. Agility again is another important factor here, because things are changing every day. You wake up every morning and you find new realities that we need to face. So I think whatever we decide today, or whatever will be applicable today, might not be applicable next week.
Agreed.
Because realities are changing. So we need to be very agile. We need to be very well aware of what is happening, and we make decisions fast, and we make the changes fast. Okay. However, the devil, as I told you, the devil is in the detail, in order to create the balance or the blend between who needs to be at the office and who can perform at home. And we make the rotation so we're fair to everybody. And those who have special cases or special needs because of certain conditions, certain personal conditions, accommodate as much as possible. Again, because there are certain talents that we would like to retain, and we would like to protect, and we would like them to perform at their best. In some cases we will be able to, some cases we will not be able to. So we need to like be very fast in reactions and creating plans and changing these plans as we go.
Agreed. I think that sense of staying agile, and I like the notions of the rotation system, so ensuring that it's fair, that that it's not a one set of people that is working from home all of the time. That it kind
You
of
need to be fair to everybody,
and it needs to be balanced and keep people engaged in being in different places. So I think that that's quite a nice balance to have. So we talk about most public and private sector organizations penciling dates of returning back to the workplace at some point, either in June, July, or August. Have you started implementing what I call work from office policies and protocols? Do you have any guidance and best practices that HR leaders and the business should be considering when preparing for the most of their people to return to the office? And these are some practical things that a lot of people need guidance on. Ava, as I mentioned, you have so many teams across the world. I'm assuming that there have been discussions and there are policies and protocols in place at DHL to ensure that things are done safely, but in a productive way. Do you want to give your 2 bits? I think we've lost your voice.
Okay, now.
Yes.
Now you can hear me. So first of all, of course, we have our frontline. They are working, but we are also cautious. Like May said, like we have about, at the moment, 20% of office staff that has returned to the office purely on voluntarily basis. So we have to really make very clear that we keep the concerns of employees in mind. Like, what does DHL do to keep me safe? As you say, like, how am I gonna conduct also my work? So when is my home going to be my basis, or is my office going to be my basis? So that discussion is very much dependent on the private situation of the individual. So we are really looking at that. And last but not least, what we discussed is then really that how do I stay engaged in the long run. So these are the 3 topics that we have on mind as well. And when it comes to coming back to office, like many of my colleagues here, we do that in a very phased approach. We give all our regions, we give them guidance in terms of like a decision matrix that we give them. That's actually a very practical tool. If anyone is interested, I really like that. And some checklists, as well as like some best case practices, because I am lucky that my colleagues in China and Asia and Europe have been just ahead of us, right? So that actually helped us to not start inventing that from scratch and to adopt that.
Yeah, I think that's great that you have, they're not footsteps to follow in, but you have their best practices and guidance. And if they've made errors or mistakes or whatever in the way that they did things, at least they are great learnings, which is particularly important. Moving on to other organizations outside of your own.
Let me share with you, Amer, if you allow me to share with you a recent example.
Sure.
An announcement from Twitter CEO that Twitter will allow its employees to work from home forever. And that was clearly said by Jack Dorsey. So now he's giving the choice for their employees to work from home for whoever sees the need to be there.
Yeah, I remember reading that as well. So I think that's the only organization that said that so far, and it's a bold move with lots of positives, but also lots of considerations as well. So as I was saying, thinking outside of your organizations, in your view, which organizations are leading the way on the new normal, the way forward, in balancing the best interests of the business and its people? So we have the business and commercial aspect of things, but we also have the people element. For example, several multinationals, I was talking to a few of our leaders in the US and in Canada. Their clients are championing mental health and well-being and driving a lot of initiatives to ensure that their people stay motivated and engaged for the long term. But it's about balancing how sustainable that is. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on which organizations you think might be leading the way on that regard. May, what are your views? Do you have any organizations that kind of spring to mind that are doing things good?
Yeah, I think tech companies, Google, Facebook, and Twitter, I think they're doing. I happen to have I know few who work there. First of all, they have the platform, they have the technology, and they have the platform. So it was very easy for their employees to work remotely. That's one thing. The second thing, I really liked the channels of communication and the frequency of communication that they kept with their employees. It was very personal. They kept them very engaged. Their line managers, the messages coming from their line managers and from the CEO and from higher levels, that was very personal, somehow informal, connecting everybody, feeling like a family. So the communication was extremely important, especially at the beginning when everybody had very high levels of anxiety, not knowing what will happen. It gave them a lot of security. And they have provided support, like as you said, mental health support and so on. And they had like designated entities, and they've opened the channels for them to get this support. So I see the system that tech companies have created is quite impressive. Has been quite impressive, and I really like. I got to read some of the communications that were sent to keep everybody connected and to keep everybody calm and focused. Was quite impressive.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it speaks volumes about the culture of some of these tech companies from their inception, and culture being the way that we do things. They do things that are very much people-centric from the beginning and have done so. And so it's natural that when it comes to a situation like this, their people have come first, which is great. Hala, what has been your experience with some of your clients that you work with? Have you seen any organizations that have been doing things particularly well when it comes to the new normal and the way forward?
As I mentioned earlier, this discussion, we have witnessed a very good feedback and cooperation from all our clients, and they are all welcoming the opportunity for having this virtual kind of business. They are all prepared and all ready for this kind of communication.
Great. Ava, with your exposure, I mean, which organizations do you feel have kind of led the way and are doing a particularly good job? And you can't say DHL.
I'm gonna be very selfish here, and I'm gonna say that we do a damn good job in terms of, we really want to make sure that, as I said, improving the lives is one of is our mission. So whatever we do make sure that we really link it to any kind of corporate social responsibility. So at the moment, I think in the UAE, there are great companies that partner up with companies for good, as an example.
Yeah.
And if you do anything related to health well-being, they help you in converting that in something purposeful. So for me, this was one of the companies that I really think is very, if you're looking for an easy way to get it linked to something impactful, I would recommend that company, and I have no stakes there. I'm just really mentioning them because they're good.
No, great.
Yeah?
And I think it's important to realize that this is a time for partnerships and synergies. And if you're work not just doing everything in house, but you're doing it things with other companies that are able to help you in that regard and support those kind of initiatives. I think this is the time to do it. And I think a number of other organizations are doing the same, which is kind of great to see those synergies happening. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to move on to the next question. This has been this last 3 months has been a great time for people to use this as an opportunity for self-development. So we've seen, and I'm an example of this. I've used the time to upskill by completing online courses. People are reading more often to broaden their knowledge on their specific functions or their expertise areas. What do you think will be the impact on talent acquisition and talent development as a result of people doing this for themselves? Hala, would you like to take that?
Yes, Amer, absolutely. This is very true. And I have been doing the same thing, using the time smartly also to further our development. And I believe that this is something really important for anyone at any level. So for something as serious as COVID-19, obviously there has been very negative effects, but at the same time, some positive effects. I will share with you a recent experience we had with one of our candidates whom we approached for a strategic high-level leadership role with a government entity. And we were expecting that he will love that role. But it turned out that he doesn't want to discuss anything at this stage because he's using this time for upskilling and developing himself through a leadership program with Harvard, because he believes his next move is not necessarily only a C-level. He wants to make it on like a nation level, maybe deputy minister or so. This is now quite common among some candidates. So the message here is we have to manage the new expectations of candidates, and we have to manage as well the changing expectations of employers and what they are looking for in the people that they will hire soon. Like for sure, they are looking for people outside the box thinkers, those with global exposures, more technical and digital savvy, very specific specialization in industry. Therefore, we will have a mixed pool of talents for those who lost their jobs and need to find a job quickly. Those may be requiring retraining. And we have another category, those who are usually in constant search for promotions, as usual. And we will have another group who are looking for things outside the traditional approach. Much higher responsibilities than they have used to have. So that's, I think, what's going to be.
No, thanks for that. I think, yeah, as you said, employers or organizations that are hiring have to adapt their expectations of what people might expect from a specific role. Maybe they will have to broaden the responsibilities, and so on and so forth. I think they have to up their game when it comes to developing their people and attracting their people. Talat, what's your view?
My view is that I think this pandemic has changed employment globally. Okay, so there's a whole demand supply thing. There's a complete shift. Okay, there's going to be a lot of supply. I think there's going to be less demand. So which means if there's such a wide pool of people, I think employers are going to be far more selective in how they hire people. I think some of the key skill sets that, at least from an HR point of view and from a business point of view, I would be looking at and testing people against would definitely be agility, flexibility, innovation, and resilience. Mm-hmm. So I think these are the 4 skill sets that I have seen in the last 3 months in people in my business, and very quickly I've been able to put people in different pockets in terms of who you thought was going to be a different kind of person has been very different under a stressful situation than a general manager that you thought was not as powerful, and suddenly they've emerged a whole new character. So it's very interesting because this has really put the different business heads into these situational leadership roles, and you can see how different people have reacted. And these are the 4 kind of areas that I think we would be looking at developing as well as hiring.
I particularly like that, because this has been a great time to really assess your people. Are they the right people to guide your organization within the good weather kind of situations, but can they also manage a crisis in the bad weather? And a lot of the stakeholders and promoters have been discussing this with us, saying that, look, I don't think I have the right team in place because they're not leading the organization throughout all waters, so to speak. So and this has happened across multinationals and some of the local conglomerates. That's particularly important to note. So thank you for that. Now it's again, we've talked about this a little bit. We've sadly seen a number of expats losing their jobs over the last few months, and they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. There are others who may voluntarily choose to relocate to their home countries in the next few months for other reasons. And so these 2 camps of people will be leaving the GCC once travel restrictions are lifted. And some, I was seeing numbers the other day, some have predicted that it will be as much as 10% of expats will leave the GCC, which is a very substantial number. And this, to my mind, puts the spotlight on initiatives like nationalization to fill in some of those gaps that might be there. What are your views on nationalization? What are organizations doing to plan to ensure that they have the right talent available if there are gaps in an organization structure? May, what are your views?
Look, nationalization has been focus area for a lot of organizations in the GCC for the past years.
Yeah.
Yet the programs that were put in place also entailed that it costs money, or resulted into higher costs because they were additional headcount, and they were very well developed at the beginning in order to integrate them faster into the system. I'm not sure if this year, in 2020, organizations will have the extra headcount budget in order to focus on that. But more than nationalization, I think, echoing also what Talat said, and Eva, and so on, and Hala, basically the skill set that's required is changing. Okay, what got organization to the current success is not necessarily the same that will take them further. So the skill sets have changed. So basically, I think the focus in the coming phase will not only be nationalization as much as the required skill sets and how can we develop them in order to have the right team and the right combination to take the organization forward. I think this will be more critical in the upcoming phase.
Completely agreed. Hala, what are your views? You're also in Saudi. The rates of nationalization, Saudiization, are very high, and the requirements are very high. What are your views on this?
As you know, Amer, the Saudi government has been taking serious initiatives on the nationalization side. And this will put pressure on companies to invest more on training and developing their local talents. But for example, several sectors has been already nationalized, like the banking industry for a while now. Mm-hmm. And for the past several years, we have been witnessing nationalization and feminization of the retail sector also. But the issue of nationalization is still limited on the industrial and manufacturing area. Because organizations in those industries are depending highly on cheap foreign labor, which in turn made those organizations delay investing in automation and digitalization. So now government is pushing organizations hard in this direction, so they will reduce dependence on foreign workforce and train their locals on such industries. The only two industries where we see it will remain depending on the foreign labor are construction and farming mainly. But this is definitely a very serious discussion in the GCC region.
Agreed, and I think you raised a really pertinent point when you talked about those in the sort of the blue collar workers and so on. We are hugely reliant on them. If we see nationalization coming on board across levels, this is something that needs to be tackled, and it's quite nice to hear that the government is really pushing this as an initiative going forward, because I think it needs to happen now, and it's particularly important. Again, very conscious of time, I will ask one last question, which will be centered around HR business partnering. HR sits at the center of an organization. I liken it to a spider's body because it sits in the middle and it has all of the arms coming off that touches the various aspects of the business. True HR business partnering, I believe, has actually really evolved over the last 3 months. Can you give any examples of hand-in-hand collaboration with the business? And what can we expect as a sort of new benchmark maybe going forward? Talat, what are your views?
Yeah, I think more than ever now, HR leaders that have not understood the business are not going to be able to survive for very long. Now more than ever, it has been really important that one understands every aspect of our business. And again, like I said, for us, it's like 22 companies. So for me, it was really important to understand very quickly which what pockets, what's going to work for which company. It wasn't a one size fits all. It wasn't a cookie cutter approach. What's going to work for our education sector would be very different to how we treat people in our construction, which never stopped for a single day. You know, throughout this whole 3 months, it's not been one day that we haven't been out there on the sites and having our construction projects go forward. So very, very different solutions in terms of how the organization is looking, what are our budgets, how behind are we expecting to be on these budgets, how are our costs with regards to our payroll costs, our employee benefit costs, our talent acquisition, our learning, how is all that going to be impacted, and how different is it going to be for each of the companies. So I think, yes, very important to understand each of our businesses and very quickly make that plan to inject some efficiencies and unfortunately some cost savings, whether in the form of salary reductions across the group or some redundancies of probably staff that we were holding on to for a while anyway. So that's where we are.
Yeah, completely agreed. And, you know, a lot of people don't think, you know, when you're working for a large organization or conglomerate that has so many diverse sectors, it's about understanding each of them. And as you said, you know, those who don't understand the business will fall by the wayside, unfortunately. And I think it's really a time for those HR professionals that don't do that to really kind of step up. Super important. And I know you're a champion of this, and that's why I sort of asked you as well. Great. Thank you for those. I think we've got about 10 minutes left, and I'm conscious that there are a lot of questions here that have come in from the viewers, which is lovely. I know we're not going to get a chance to go through all of them, but I'll do my best to kind of go through as many as I can. One question that's come from Kiran in the UAE. What are the initiatives that companies are doing to increase the sense of belonging in these testing times? I think somebody alluded to this earlier, but are there any other initiatives that people are doing to do that? May, any thoughts?
As I said, like the support that companies are offering for mental health and so on, being agile into taking personal circumstances of employees into consideration while putting together these plans. You will not believe how much like small steps that we take to accommodate employees, how much loyalty this creates at the end of employees feeling that they are within a family. It's not only that I'm here to deliver a certain role and if I'm not good enough, I'm being left out of the equation. There are various initiatives that we're taking into consideration, even when the organizations decide into making cost savings on headcount cost. Okay, trying to manage retaining jobs as much as possible and explaining what the company is doing and why is that in order for us to survive, and then we all have to take the pain together. This also, even though the decision is very tough and it's very tough on each and every person individually, but people start to understand and feel like part of the family. We all need to contribute it so we all survive together. So there are so many things that we have taken, or that organizations have taken into consideration while going through these changes, that created even higher, I think, loyalty than before.
Yeah, I agree. It's a time for people to feel truly aligned, right, as part of the family of the organization, which is key. A pretty interesting question here. You know, so there are some organizations that are not, making maybe salary cuts or laying off people. But one of the viewers is asking that incentive plans may be sort of under the water. There may not be no bonuses, coming out this year, but we still need to keep our teams energized. How can we manage this going forward? Ava, do you want to try that one?
Yeah, so we're one of those companies that has not done any kind of like cuts, and we stay to that statement till how much we can. We do have in so many countries as well some legal obligations when it comes to incentives. So we actually, when it comes to bonuses, believe it or not, but May has been one of our best months so far, and that is mainly because of the crisis. Some of our margins have been better. So of course this is for these months, but we do really expect that dip to come over the last. Like, we are more worried about Q3, Q4. So yes, if we have agreements with employees, and it's very clearly stated. So if we don't make these agreements, and we will discuss if we will do waive and take some of these circumstances into consideration. But otherwise, that discussion is usually happening in Q4 if we do pay the bonus or not. So we do not have that discussion today as yet.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of, a time will tell kind of a situation, and as we know, we have to kind of be a bit fluid in the way that we make these decisions. But I think that's a smart way about doing this. Another question is, are CHROs considering investing in their staff during this period and upgrading their skills proactively? Or is it something that's completely off the menu and you're dealing with other things like cost cutting, reallocation of resources within your business, and so on and so forth? Talat, what is your take?
So we have again, there is huge pushback on cost and stuff, but the best thing is, I have a very, very lean learning and development team of just two or three people for employees, like for 6,000 employees. And the best part is, this incredible team has produced the most amazing learning material that they release on a weekly basis. We've been really innovative in how we've done stuff and how we've done virtual training. So I'm really proud of the team, because at zero cost, we've literally produced some incredible material that is available for everyone. So from mental health to stress, to the stuff about the virus itself, to leadership in tough times, to, so all kinds of amazing things that our team have produced. So it is possible to invest in people and give them some kind of learning and reaching out to them without having to spend a bomb.
Yeah, I just want to add to Talat. I think this is really one of the benefits now that we are having. You see more and more of this blended learning. So yes. What we offer today, it's 20 people in a classroom. We are just able, as an HR organization, I really see this as a positive thing for our community. We're able to offer this in a multiplied way to a larger audience. The only part where we stay a bit conscious is it cannot be like fully flipped, right? We still look at it face to face, because a lot is also people take away the networking part, etc. So as soon as we have some flexibility to do again some of these parts, we will go way more into that mix that we didn't do so much before.
Yeah, and sorry, May.
Sorry, I do echo that, because surprisingly, we came up with ideas of virtual training that was at much, much lesser cost and way more effective. And people had time, being at home, had the time to benefit from this even more. So it was a time where we can even do more in terms of talent development.
Great to hear. And talent development doesn't always need to cost, right? There's a lot of things that you can do as leaders that doesn't cost anything to develop your people. So that's something that is particularly noteworthy. And somebody else also asked, it's a tied-in question. Are these playbooks or these guidance sort of manuals available to others, or is it just within your respective organizations? Do you publish them? Are they put on your websites? Are they put into the public domain so that others can use and learn?
I'm very happy to share my contacts, because we don't have them on the platform, but I'm happy to share it. And it's a good question. Why wouldn't we make it available? Because it is not something that is rocket science or that much difference with other companies. Yeah, I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Is that the same for
There are public platforms that you can enroll in, and you can benefit from these like training sessions that they put.
Yeah,
I think it's more about if I understood the question well, it's not per se only with the learning, but it's more about, like, for example, going back to office, some of these policies, etc.
A lot of things.
Today, That's what. So today, like I think this sharing already happens within a lot of like the HR networking groups. But yeah, again, happy to for people to reach out, and I'll also think about how we can make it available externally. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I think that's actually really kind. And I think, look, I think it's also about sharing insights, sharing guidance. It's not going to apply to all, but I think if people have access to the material, they can sort of pick the bits that kind of make the most sense to them, their organizations as well. Okay, I think we'll have to kind of leave it there because it's 6 o'clock. So we've run out of time in terms of the Q&A. I apologize, I wanted a bit more time for it. But again, I will try and ask all of the questions to the panelists after this and try and get them emailed out to the participants. So apologies for that. So that wraps up the session. Thank you to so many people. Firstly, thank you to all of our panelists for making this happen and a success. I mean, the leadership conversation series up until now has been received very well and has been actually requested by a lot of leaders for different functions. So I think the insights that are shared are super valuable. So thank you, Talat, May, Ava, and Hala for taking the time and for really kind of sharing your valuable insights and experience. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Amer, for moderating so nicely. Thank you as well, Amer.
Great seeing you all. Thank you.
Most welcome. Thank you to everyone who has viewed this. Thank you for supporting us. We will continue producing the Leadership Conversation series with different speakers in different functions to enable the sharing of insights. So thank you for everyone who's taken their 1 hour out of their Thursday evening to participate. And lastly, thank you very much to the EMA Partners UAE team, the EMA Partners Saudi team. Huge thanks to our tech and ops team. I'm one of the most technically unsavvy people, and so the fact that this is happening is all because of them. So thank you guys, you know who you are. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thank you, Amer. Same to you. Same to all of you. Have a great evening. Bye.
Great. See you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.